This is the budget meeting where we're going to go through in more. First of all, we're going to start out with an overview that Chris is going to do, and I'll probably jump in on, that looks at exactly what the budget means in terms of what we're doing, what are our revenues, what are we spending money on, how does it compare to what we've done before, what are some of the major things that are included in this budget. And then we're going to go department by department. And I would invite anybody to jump in and ask questions wherever you see that you want more information. This is a night where you should get into the detail of whatever you want to know. And, you know, we're going to be here for probably a few hours. So I think we'll get started. And to that end, Chris, I'm going to ask you to start the thing off.
Okay. We'll start off with the timetable and key events. Tonight, obviously, the budget study session. Next Tuesday, we'll present the preliminary budget and tax levy to the council. Truth in taxation right now is scheduled for November 28th, and then we will send the final levy and budget to the council on December 11th. Some of the key issues for 2019, property taxes still remain our primary funding source and probably will going forward in the future. Within the 2019 budgeted revenues, 1.2 million of those revenues are LGA. That's approximate $50,000 increase of budgeted LGA from 2018. We're still realizing health insurance increases throughout the general fund. Public safety dispatch increased to $290,000 this year. I think that's a $40,000 increase from last year. We're realizing a debt service tax levy for the 2018 bonds of $375,000. That's an increase to our debt service levies and our overall levy. Police and fire are going through personnel cost increases. They both have young police officers and young firefighters that are going through the step increases. So that's increasing those costs. We had a $15,000 increase in our rolling stock levy, up to $800,000. One small positive is that we transitioned our homestead application process to Hennepin County. That will save the city a little bit of money in the general fund. Just a quick history of state aid, which is primarily LGA here. If you just look at 2018 to 2019, basically it's flat. We had a very modest marginal increase of $6,300. Nothing really to speak of there. If we look at a revenue comparison of taxes and intergovernmental revenue, now LGA is within intergovernmental revenue. If we go all the way back to 2001, they're virtually equal. 38% taxes, 38.9% LGA revenue, intergovernmental revenue. And within that 39%, 24% of that was local government aid. The next slide will show that. If we jump forward to 2019, we're at 68% of revenue is taxes, and then intergovernmental revenue is only 10%. Which is actually an increase from prior years. So if you look at LGA, back in 2001, as I said, it was 24% of general fund revenues. This year in 2018 and 2019, LGA makes up only 4.95% of general fund revenues. If we look at our proposed gross levy, right now the gross levy is sitting at $21,626,692. It's an increase of 4.87% over the 2018 levy. It's comprised of the general fund levy of $16.7 million, the equipment levy of $800,000, and the EDA levy of $567,000, which gives us a base levy of almost $18.1 million. The debt service levy is at almost $3.2 million, and then the tax abatement levy is $372,000, which brings us to our $21.6 million gross levy, 4.87% increase.
Chris, I'm going to just jump in for a second. And, you know, one of the points that I always want to make, and something that I think we'll begin to take a closer look at, is the debt service levy. You can see at 3.1 or almost $3.2 million. You know, as we keep on issuing debt for all of the infrastructure improvements that we're doing in the city, obviously that's going to increase each year. That's what makes it very, very difficult to bring the tax levy anywhere down around 3%. If you look at our general fund levy, and you could really get rid of the difference of there's about $375,000 increase in in the debt levy for the bonds that we're issuing this year, because we're talking about 2019 payable, we probably would have a tax levy increase of just a little over 2%, or
3%.
3%, I'm sorry, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's something to just keep in mind.
we've got a slide that'll show that going forward. Just a gross tax levy history. You can see 2019 at 4.87%. Last year, we're at 6.11%. That's primarily due to another debt service levy, and then also the EDA levy was the first time last year in 2018, so that's why that little bump there. And here's the slide I was talking about, what Steve was referring to. If we didn't have the levy for the 2018 A bonds, we'd be at 3.05%. And then prior to 2008, there were no debt service tax levies. So it's really only been in the last 10, 11 years where we've had a lot of these debt service tax levies that have started to put pressure on our overall tax levy.
Can we just take a pause quick, and can you explain what the debt service levy means for folks? I know there's going to be several people listening in, because it's if we didn't have that, well, I don't know that we can't not have that. So can you explain that a little bit for folks in detail?
Basically, when we issue debt, like street reconstruction bonds, the way that debt is paid off or the way it's serviced is through a tax levy, a dedicated tax levy for those bonds. That's part of the bond covenants, and when we issue the debt, that's all spelled out, that's how the bonds will be repaid, and it's repaid through a tax levy, dedicated tax levy. Is that?
Yeah, thank you. So this is when we look at 3.05 to 4. What is it?
87.
That is to cover the infrastructure.
Yeah, so
costs
it's a lot of
for
the
our
road,
roads
the
and-
road improvements, even the building we're sitting in and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
The 2019 proposed general fund budget is at $24,228,050. That's a 3.76% increase over the 2018 adopted budget. And this detail the general fund revenues. You can see taxes, obviously the greatest revenue source for the general fund, followed by intergovernmental revenues, charges for services, and then transfers in. If we look at just a comparison from 2018 to 2019, really, there's no change. There's a slight decrease in taxes of 2%, and that is offset by a slight increase of, for intergovernmental revenues of 2%. That's got to be the increase in the LGA that we've been using now the last 2 years. If we look at general revenues going back to 2009, again, it's very comparable. Taxes show an increase from 2009. However, intergovernmental revenues show a decrease from 2009. Otherwise, everything else is fairly comparable. General fund expenditures, all the departments, you can see 23.35 million in 2018, up to 24.2 million in 2019. Just a comparison here from 2018 to 2019 by department. You can see there's really no change in the percentage of each department to the total. It's literally the same. If we do look at our 3 largest departments and the 3 most visible departments of the city, public safety, public works, and fire, they equal 18.1 million, or 75% of the city's general fund. Now, if we remember back to that slide with all the general fund revenues, the total general fund tax levy is only $16.5 million, so the tax levy does not even cover those 3 departments. We have to generate revenues from other sources to balance the general fund. If we look back from 29 to 2019, just an expenditure profile, you can see everything there is very comparable to what it is now. I mean, you can see a slight decrease in public works, a little bit of an increase in community development went from 1% to 6%. Public works went from 21 to 18%. But everything else is pretty darn comparable to what it's been over the years. And this graph really doesn't change much from year to year. Looking at average general fund balance, average increase of 2.56% over the life of from 2012 to now. Not a big change. If we look at full-time regular personnel, we're at 193 full-time budgeted positions. We're down 1 position from 2018. It was at 194, and that position is the assessing clerk that we no longer, or basically from the transition of the homestead application process to Hennepin County. It was through retirement attrition, and we didn't fill the position. If we look at the impact of the levy on a resident of a $225,000 property, if we look at the city portion of their taxes from 2018, it's just under $1,300. If we skip down to the third number there, the city portion of the tax with a 4.87% levy increase and the 10.6% estimated market value increase, their taxes increased to $1,315, which is a little over $16. The question may arise as to why, if we have a 4.87% tax levy increase and a 13.6% market value increase, why the small increase of $16.39. It's basically due to with the market value of the entire city increasing, our tax capacity, overall tax capacity value has increased. So that when you calculate the tax capacity rate for the city, it's actually decreased from 57% to 52%, and that is the primary reason for the marginalized increase in taxes and things like that. And Steve will go into a little more detail.
Oh, thanks. I was just going to ask, just for folks that may be watching at home or here, just maybe taking a minute to explain, just to slow down and just explain that for us.
Well, if you look at the $225,000 property, you convert the properties to tax capacity, and that's 1% of the property. So 1% of $225,000 is $2,250, and you multiply that times the city's tax capacity rate, which is calculated off the total of the city's tax capacity value and its tax levy and things like that, just to simplify it.
I've got a slide on
Yeah.
that, and I'll just put it up.
Steve's slide will do a lot better job than I will.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we move on to a $250,000 property, the trend pretty much continues. $18.22 increase over 2018. And if we go to the $275,000 property, it's basically a $20 increase. And again, that's due to the market value increase overall of the city and the tax capacity rate decrease. If we look at our capital improvement budget for 2019, it's sitting right now at $31,075,000. Some of the major projects include the continuation of the 66th Street project, the 77th Street underpass, the Mill and Overlay project. The various utility projects are included in that, and also various recreation projects and things are included within that. If we look at our rolling stock and our equipment purchases budgeted for 2019, it exceeds $1 million. Our general levy to help cover those costs is only at $800,000. So we do some cash flow transfers in to kind of fill that gap from $1 million to $800,000. And some of the purchases or some of the planned budgeted purchases are new fire pumper body, an ice resurfacer. Something brand new is 4 plug-in hybrid vehicles for our inspectors. Inspections department, 4 interceptor squads, and computer network infrastructure and equipment. A lot of that's going to be a new phone system and new phones for the city. Where are we going? This is kind of same slide. It's the same news every year. Significant right-of-way projects that we're funding through debt. And with that debt, we're incurring tax levies to service that debt, and that puts a lot of pressure on our overall tax levy. So we need to continue our long-term strategy for economic independence. Again, and that strives for LGA independence, although there's been a lot of pressure the last several years to maintain that. But we're getting there. And then also we need to maintain our long-term financial planning to see where we're going and what we can do, hopefully to plan forward. And then we need to maintain our current level of quality service, and then also to contain the operating costs that are within our control to contain and things like that. You want to do yours first, or?
Yeah, if I can, Neil, can you pull that up for me? So we went all through this, and we talked about what does it mean? We talked about a levy increase, but really what people want to know is how does it affect their property tax? And this is a fairly simple, I think, of process, although the terms are very complex. And so let me walk through this. If for taxes payable in 2018, you had a property in Richfield that was worth $225,000, there's a state statute that converts the market value of everyone's home to a tax capacity for that home. And that formula is a simple 1%. So if you had a property in Richfield that was worth $225,000, the state statute says that that home has a tax capacity of $2,250. To find out what the impact of the city's tax levy is, you have to go to the city's tax capacity rate. And that's a calculation that's done, well, we do it here, but ultimately the county does it, based on the amount of revenue that we're trying to raise against all the cumulative value of the community, and it's a mathematical calculation. So for payable 2018, that tax capacity rate for the city was 0.57729. So all you do is, once you know what your city's tax capacity rate is, and you know how to convert your home value into a tax capacity, you just multiply the two together. And here, for someone, for taxes payable in 2018, the city portion of their taxes was $1,298.90. So what happens for payable 2019, based on what Chris has gone through and what we're going to show you tonight? Well, the first thing we know is that according to Hennepin County, the average increase for the property in Richfield was 10.6%. This is the second year in Richfield that the average property value of homes has gone up over 10%. So now the home that was valued for payable 2018, that was $225, for payable 2019 taxes is now worth $248,850. Use the same simple calculation, the 1%, and now the tax capacity of that person's home is $2,488.50. But now you're looking at, you don't use last year's tax capacity rate, you use our new tax capacity rate. And this year it's 0.52855. And when you make that calculation, the city portion of the tax for that home is $1,315.30. An increase of $16.39 a year, or $1.37 a month, or 1.28% increase in their city tax.
I just want to also say that, these numbers that we receive, we get most of them from the county, and right now they are preliminary numbers. So
right.
they probably will change. To what extent, we don't know.
Yeah.
But we're relying on the county for some of these figures.
Right, of course, when you're making these kind of calculations before all the figures are in from all the other taxing jurisdictions and everybody who works on putting all this data together, especially the county, you're only making guesses and estimates, but this is going to be pretty darn close. So the big point here that I think the takeaway is that even though we are spending more money to maintain and improve our city's infrastructure, and that's through the debt service, the fact that we're adding more value in this community through the commercial development and everything else that we've got going on, and the multifamily developments that are coming on board, that spreads that cost over a greater value, and you can see the impact right there for a homeowner. Instead of having a huge increase, when you think, oh my gosh, we have almost a 5% levy increase, and my gosh, my property went up 10.6%. Oh, I put two together, I'm looking at a 15% increase. That's not how it works, but I think the news is good news.
Steve, a quick question, a version of the same question a Fox 9 reporter asked me today about the development boom in Richfield. How much, I would assume that very little of the current development we're seeing is seen in these numbers, and that when we look even longer term, in terms of our ability to sort of diversify our tax base and take some pressure off homeowners, it actually probably it paints even a better picture.
That's a good point, Councilmember Howard. Yeah, a lot of the stuff that you're seeing now is not included in these numbers. And from what is, the $200 million that we're looking at that is either in process of being built or is going to be built, that's not even accounted for here. So you're talking about, again, a huge influx of more value into the tax base. And that's the good news as we take a look at the fact that we have to pay for infrastructure. But it's one of those things that when people say, well, why the big interest in Richfield right now? Well, it's a lot of things. One is our location, obviously. Richfield is ideally located. But we have put so much money into our infrastructure, our roads, our sidewalks, our walking paths, and our underground infrastructure. The community looks really good. I think people who see Richfield just see a community that's on the way up. And with attractive home values in the community where people can come in, and you see that in developers who look at this and say, yeah, this is a good place to be. There's a lot of public transportation. So you put it all together, and it's really a good story. If you think about it, what about 2024 or so? Best Buy will come online. That's $117 million of tax value that's going to come on the books. So there's just a lot of good stuff on the horizon for Richfield.
Thanks, that's really helpful. And just one small follow-up. I'm trying to remember the exact timing. Is there some commercial expansion that's seen in these numbers? Like I'm trying, from year over last, like for example, Audi, I'm trying to remember if they were, the timing of some of our larger developments where that fits.
Yeah, my guess is that that's the case with Audi. You know, the way that a property's assessed, it's kind of a year in the rears.
Right.
So I think just now, we're starting to see the impact of Audi and some others as well.
So when you say just now, the Audi improvements are included in the 2019 valuation, or they will be next year?
No, I believe that they would be included this year.
I don't know, to be honest.
I'm pretty sure that that's the case.
Steve, can I just share a couple observations that I made in terms of the fiscal responsibility of the city, and just check these if they're incorrect. But when residents think about how our taxpayer dollars are being spent at the city, what I saw from Chris's presentation and the work and then the homework we did before this, our general fund has been our operating costs and our general fund money has stayed pretty stable, and there's slight increases from year to year, which really focus on maybe there's pay increases for people that have been, with us for several years. But overall, we have been providing quality services for many years at the same budget. And what I saw in one of the charts with much less staff than we used to operate. So more services, changing demographics, changing things happening in Richfield, and we've been able to keep our operating expenses stable throughout those years. When Chris talked about our main source of income being property taxes, the other option to that would be having more local government aid, which then is money that our city can't count on, and depending on who's in office at the state, we've seen changes, drastic changes in local government aid. So as a city, to be making financial decisions that really take the power of our city financially and put it in somebody else's hands is really not very smart. So again, being fiscally responsible and weaning the city off of the local government aid over the years so that we have the power and control over kind of the income of the city and not at the state level. And then where I'm seeing that the biggest pressure comes for residents in our taxes are on the debt service bonds and levy to focus on rebuilding our infrastructure. And so these aren't bells and whistle type of things. This is really basic infrastructure changes that have to be made. And when we've asked staff in the past, looking at different options and ways to save money, when you look at mill and overlay or the different things that we do look at to invest in, these are a lot of times the safest options, the most affordable options for the city. So again, no matter what we're looking at the basic infrastructure and ways that we can save. So, I mean, is that correct? I just wanted to kind of recap all of that, because when people look at this and they want to know what is it going for, we've been operating with the same amount of money over several years with less staff, more services, and that pressure is really coming from things that we have to do that we have no choice, which is updating our roads and infrastructure. Is that correct?
I mean, you're absolutely correct on everything you said. You know, the one thing I would add to that is the Richfield model of doing that. We're doing it through this debt service. But keep in mind, there's lots of other cities out there who, when they decide to do a street, they do the street, and then the homeowner finds on their tax bill that they owe, I don't know, $18,000, $15,000. It's payable immediately. Now, they'll let you spread it out, maybe over 5 years, I don't know, 3 years to 5 years, depending on what city it is, but they'll charge you interest. And I think most folks, to roll this in across the entire city, because every road, whether it's the road in front of your house or not, you're not the only person benefiting from that. There's other people driving on that street. At least that's the way I look at it, the way the city of Richfield has looked at it. Something to spread across the whole city. And so, yes, you will have incremental increases in our tax levy because we're paying for that debt, but no one has to get the unpleasant surprise in Richfield of opening up their property tax statement and seeing all of a sudden they're being assessed, you know, again, somewhere between $12,000 and $20,000 for their share of some road construction. And that's just the Richfield model. I think it's a better model. And the other part of it is, you're right, we're operating with considerably less staff than we had. Heck, around the year 2000, 2001, we were probably running with about 230 employees. We're running with, what, 193, Chris? So we're down employees. I would say that the service that we're providing right now is every bit as good as the service that we provided in 2000, 2001. Part of it is productivity. I mean, we take advantage of whatever we can to be more productive in what we do, but it's one of those things. If we were increasing staffing and doing all those things at the same time that we were facing this infrastructure rebuild, it would put a lot of pressure on our tax base. So yeah, everything you said is right on.
I have another question. So is there a way that we could look at different models for our debt service that we take out? So I understand that for 2019, we've already determined what the debt we will be taking out for our infrastructure. But what about looking after 2019 and saying, all right, we're not going to take the full $10 million out in bonding. We're going to look at $8 million and below to help, again, alleviate the pressure and not just put all our eggs in the commercial redevelopment basket.
Yeah, I think, one of the things, I've been trading phone calls back and forth with Rebecca at Ellers, and I've been leaving messages for her. I want to sit down and talk with her and just, help us do kind of an analysis of how you take a look at that. On the one hand, there is the pressure on the debt service. On the other hand, we've got infrastructure that's got to be addressed, and if you don't address it, it gets more expensive each year. But you're right.
It's just
There has to
mapping
be-
it out so that we
Exactly.
can have an
Yes.
understanding. Here's our options. We can go
Right.
to 8 million, but here's the risk that we're going to take. And then down the road, we're going to end up investing more, and just so we can do cost benefit analysis.
Absolutely, and I intend to get that started before I leave here.
Thanks.
Okay?
Steve, you're up.
Just real quick, I was just going to say two quick things just along those lines. I think that'd be really helpful. And, part of this is it's a little wistful. It's because we know we're going to be doing this with a different team member next year, which I just want to say, I'll probably say it a couple times this evening, but I've appreciated so much how much I've learned about municipal budgets from you in the last year and a half. And so I'm grateful for that.
Thank you.
But with that in mind, could you sketch it maybe just momentarily now and then in the future, just give us like just a snapshot of like a 5-year plan. So we're, a lot of this is we're comparing this year as opposed to last year, in a lot of the analysis, but kind of this year, can you give us a sense of this year as opposed to the next couple of years where we're going? And I'll just share this briefly along with your example of those assessments. I have a small business client that recently bought a building in the last year or two in St. Paul and promptly got a $25,000 assessment.
Yeah.
And just the pain
Oh.
of putting all your eggs in that basket and then finding out you have $250,000 that you have to pay. I'm just so pleased that the Richfield way is not to do that. I don't think our businesses could sustain that. A lot of our homeowners can't. So we all see a $16 a month increase, and nobody's happy about that. But I think in general, we can't communicate that enough to our community, that the Richfield way is us sharing that burden together, as opposed to, it's easy from a taxpayer perspective too. So nobody's going to be up in arms if you just say, well, that poor soul got socked with $25,000. And so I think that's a good way to approach this.
Well, I think that in 2019, it's almost, it's a done deal, pretty much, unless you're going to let Lindale Avenue go. You're going to have to do about a $10 million bond issue for 2019. That would be payable 2020. And that will add probably, I'm going to guess, about another $400,000. 600,000
6.5 probably.
for another 10? Oh, really?
Well, 2017 was like 9.6 or something, it was 622,000, so I'm guessing at least 6.
Oh, okay, well, so that's significant, and like Councilmember Reagan Gonzalez said, it is good to sit back and take a look at that. You have other things in the community that you have to think about, and I'm not sure how you're going to handle it, but for example, you've got an ice arena that's running off of very antiquated refrigeration equipment, and the fuel or the refrigerant in there they don't sell new anymore. You'd have to go buy used, I think, to replace it. But that's something that's got to be looked at, and that's a big decision point, because it's not inexpensive. I'm going to guess it's going to be between $3 and $4 million if you did both of those ice sheets, and you have to do something, and you don't have all that money on hand. There's probably some set aside for that, Chris?
Very little, but yeah, there is.
Yeah. So there's some set aside. You've got some park buildings that are in pretty bad shape, and the two of them I can think of are Donaldson, I believe, and Taft. Oh my gosh, they're in really bad shape. You have to take a look at doing something with that. You've got 65th Street that something has to happen with one way or another, because we're going to have redevelopment in the hub. There is a sewer line that right now that's going to have to be moved, and you're not going to move a sewer line without doing the street at the same time. That would be crazy. And so, that's something that's coming up, and probably, I don't know, 2020 at the latest, probably, Kristen, I would think?
I would say at the soonest.
At the soonest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Matt,
I would just add, though, that's maybe some of the bad news.
Yeah.
Some of the good news is, we've been talking about this boom we've been having. Well, we had
Yeah.
another boom, though, back from like 98 to 2002. There are a lot of projects happened then. Many of them had TIF districts. And not only is Best Buy going to go off, a bunch of them are going to go off. City Bella is going to go off. Woodlake Center is going to go off. The first to go off is going to be where Dick's Sporting Goods is. The Lindale Gateway is going to come off. So a bunch of them are going to be coming off anywhere from like 2022 to 26. So you talked about the 5-year plan, Simon, that there's a lot of revenues that are going to be
Right.
picked up in that time period.
Yeah.
And the tax abatement district's
Yeah,
gonna come
that's
off
so-
too, right?
What's that?
Tax abatement district will come off
Yes, the
within
tax
5 years.
abatement for
Right.
the Target Home Depot.
So again, the bonding part of it is something you can take a look at, but, as I said, all the stuff that we're doing, that's going to be coming on, TIF
Yeah,
districts
and
coming off. And
So at,
But once again, isn't that the balance we've been talking about for the last 5 or 6 years?
Yeah.
So I guess what you're saying, you need to give us the information. But even like Maria said, in terms of a cost-benefit analysis, and when you look at those, you need to keep that balance in mind, because cutting it for 1 or 2 years to kind of give a feel-good, look what we did, just extends the pain. So that's where the balance has to be, and you need to weigh what's coming off, what's going back onto the tax rolls, how do we balance that out? And from my perspective, debt is necessary but not necessarily a good thing. So I'm not inclined to cut it back to 8 for a year unless there really is a benefit other than just deferring it. Because it gains more interest, it piles up and it gets more. So, and that's why John offering the balance on the things that are coming off is when we're doing our planning now, we need to be planning 8, 10 years ahead, just like we did 8 years ago. And that's why, you know, our financial manager and our city manager and everybody's so important, because we get a long view and we need to rely on them to present the picture longitudinal to really make the good decisions at the council level. And so all that information is relevant, but I think we still want to keep in mind, delay is not necessarily good because it adds interest and we got to pick it up. So keeping that balance in mind at all the time. And when we look at the things and what we're doing, it's an awful lot of money, but what we're doing is reinventing our infrastructure and building it for another 50 years. So all the, and the citizens need to be made aware of that, not just the cost of it. So it's a balancing act, and on our part, for lack of a better term, it's us educating the people why it works this way and why they're not getting assessments of $15,000 to $20,000 because the Richfield Way says we share the pain, we don't dump it on each individual homeowner.
Yeah, and that's why the whole idea of getting Ellers in to take a look at that and bringing all that stuff out, putting all that stuff together. You know, yes, you have these things you have to take a look at, but again, as you look at it, at the same time, you'd be modeling out what do we think our tax base is going to be looking like as these things come on, and as the commercial development that we see now is coming on. So that's the kind of analysis that I can't give you tonight, but I think that we need to invest some resources into with Ellers to work with us to put that together. And, you know, it's part of that template, that plan that you talked about, Simon, looking forward to decide, you know, what's the safe amount to take on, and, you know, let's work off of that. So, yeah.
Thank you, Steve. And I was just, folks can correct me if I'm wrong, I just wanted to mention something about the hub in the redevelopment, that for a long time, for folks that aren't aware, that's owned by a REIT or a real estate investment trust. They own a lot of similar properties. And for a number of years, the hub has been a property they've wanted to invest no money in and no dollars. And we've seen that property degrade right at the center of our community. And some of the value add of improving those roads is that property has gone from they've made a market decision from we're going to put no dollars in to we're going to totally redevelop that. And so some of that big picture, the investment that we're making municipally is turning into fruit that people are saying this is a place worthy of investment, worthy of increased housing density, worthy of commercial redevelopment. And so we're already starting, like, that's a huge, flipping the hub is a really big deal for our community.
Okay, so legislative, executive, these, you got the mayor, city council, other agencies, city manager, and legal. And again, there's a pretty modest increases here. The 2018 revised actually goes down a little bit in total. And the 2019 goes up around 26,000 roughly. Do you know what percent that is off the top of your head, Chris?
I can tell you. Just under 3%, 2.9.
Yeah. Again, this is another one of those basically status quo kinds of budgets. And we can go on to the various slides, but you can see the expenditure comparison. Again, this is really a pretty flat department over the years. In city council, what's in there? Continue to evaluate the service delivery options, cost reductions, revenue generating opportunities. Very important to monitor the state of Minnesota legislative session and impact on city. Obviously, one of the biggest things that I think that you all should keep your ears open for, and we're going to have somebody sitting in the legislature from Richfield, I'm sure, and the idea there is the whole issue of fiscal disparities. I know that legislators from another community in the South Metro have talked about doing away with that fiscal disparities, using that money for something else. for transportation. That is not a good use of that money, and it's critical for cities like Richfield. And again, for payable 2019, we have like $3.6 million coming back out of fiscal disparities for us. That's huge, huge. Then, of course, you got the city manager recruitment, and that'll take up your fall. And other agencies, 8 nonprofit agencies were awarded $70,480 in grants. You know, this stays pretty flat. Have we increased that amount at all, Chris, or is it pretty level?
Actually went down a little bit, but I think some of the time that's charged to that department was decreased, I think. So
I
it went
see.
down just a little bit. The 7,480 is pretty flat, though.
Yeah, that's what I mean, that amount. You know, it's, again, it just comes down to money. Just don't have the money to throw at it. City manager, maintain city's targeted fund balance goal, and we've been really good at that and, you know, adding to it. Continue to upgrade and improve communication mechanisms. I think we've been doing a really good job of that, and I can only see it getting better. 2018-19, council staff planning, strategic planning. Again, I think that went well. Participate in 2018 Minnesota cohort on Government Alliance on Race and Equity. And we're in that and finishing up the year. Interestingly enough, I got a call from former city manager Jim Prosser from South Carolina the other day and asked me, yeah, Steve, what do you think? You know, we're thinking the idea of getting into this Government Alliance on Race and Equity. What do you think? And I said, you know, it's a lot of work and a lot of staff commitment, but it's certainly worth it. And yeah, I'd say I'd encourage you to do it. So looks like he's going to do it. That's cool. We filled all adult commission appointments in 2018, and we continue to strive to provide cost-effective and efficient services. Under legal, I think we have just excellent legal representation by our city legal firms. Prosecution costs slightly increased in 2019, but my gosh, the prosecution costs were held flat for, my God, at least a half a dozen years, maybe more. No increase at all. And they're just the basic legal costs reflect the increase in 2019. Again, very, very small increases. And we just get, for the buck, we just get great legal service.
Right. Administrative services budget consists of general fund divisions, administration, human resources, finance, city clerk, deputy reg, assessing, funds, information technologies fund, self-insurance fund, and building services fund. You want to go or you want me to? Or?
You can do that.
Okay. You can see the budget was at 1.466 in 2018. It's down to just barely over 1.4 million, and that's primarily due to the transitioning of the homestead application process to Hennepin County. You can see in the assessing line item there, went from 425 to 349, and that's the primary big change in that department, in this department. Expenditure history, you can see a slight little bump, but it's fairly flat. Revenue history, which is primarily the deputy registrar operation for the license tabs and the passports. The increase is primarily due to a lot of the passport revenue that we've been generating and things like that. So really, that's all the revenue in this department was generated through them. And just a comparison, not much more to say there. I mean, it's pretty standard or pretty comparable from year to year. Budget highlights.
Chris, can I ask just a quick question? Just right. So when we get revenue, the city does, that goes to our general fund from the utilization of the clerk's office?
Yeah, the passports and the license tabs and things. Yeah, we generate quite a bit of revenue, about approximately $800,000, I think. It might be a little high on that.
That's about it.
Is it?
Could anybody speak to, are we at capacity with that office, or are there things that we could do to even invite more people to utilize the service? Because it's super convenient. I just wonder how busy we are. Is there room to grow in that area? Not necessarily a question
Well,
for you, Chris.
yeah, well, Minlars hasn't helped.
Right. You know, the issue is we did expand the workstations about 2 years ago because we had so much business. And, you know, right now, I don't think we could add anything. The problem that we have, again, is Minlars is so messed up And even when MNLARs, if and when they ever get it straightened away, the way that the new system is, basically, the city Dep Reg offices have to do way more work, and the state does less, and basically, we get paid the same unless unless there's a rate increase for processing. And, the passports, that's been steady business. One of the things, we have a lot of dealer work. We get a ton of dealer work from our Richfield car companies, and, once Land Rover and Jaguar get, we'll have more, but, yeah, we have just, we get stacks of that stuff, and so that helps keep that revenue up.
So Chris and I are going to tag team a bit here. Under administration, one highlight is we facilitated Spanish language workshops for our staff. This year, after this fall, because we're going to have another set of workshops, we will have had over 50 of our employees taken an introductory workshop. All of our firefighters went through it, and several other departments are participating. Public Works is going to have a big group going through this fall, and that's actually in response to our employee engagement survey, where staff said, we'd like to have more knowledge and ability in this area to help provide good customer service. So that's been really successful, and we're going to continue with that. Also, as Steve already mentioned, we have been participating in the Minnesota cohort, the GARA cohort. That's been a lot of staff time and commitment this year. It's going great. There's still a lot of work to do, but so we're very much involved in that. And just want to also note, achieved 100% efficiency and timeliness of workers' compensation claims reporting. That's always really important. Under human resources, we have been continuing to work on developing strategies to hire for diversity. That's one of our big initiatives with GARE. We are doing things like we're tracking our EEO results when we have job postings to try to identify what barriers there might be for people to apply or to get into the interview segment. And so we're really trying to kind of look at the data and make adjustments. And we're also, I'm not sure if you probably haven't noticed, but we took our equity statement that we developed and we've put it now on our jobs page. So anybody that wants to apply for a city job, you first read our statement and you have to acknowledge that you've read it and then that's a value of our organization. And the other thing related to that is we did specifically go into the high school this year to recruit for our seasonal positions with a lot of success. Of course, there's a lot of diversity in our schools, and we want to reflect that in our seasonal staff. The other items under HR, continuing to modify and enhance our employee wellness program because our claims experience actually really now correlates with what our rates are because rate banding was implemented a year ago. And so actually we had good experience last year and we had a favorable movement on the rate band. So it's important. We're going to keep working on that. And then finally, coordinated harassment training for all employees. That's required training in this day and age right now. It's extremely important.
Within the finance division, continued the GFOA and the CAF awards. That's the budget and the annual financial report awards from the Government Finance Officers Association. We reaffirmed our city's AA+ bond rating, which is right below a AAA, so hopefully someday we'll get up to AAA. That's my dream. And then we maintained our general fund balance goal, which is 40% of actual revenues for each year and things like that. So get back to Pam.
So under city clerk, very, very busy year. They implemented a fast lane for registration of tabs, and that's really helped, I think, customer service experience at the Deb Reg office. And so now people can, if they're here just to get their tabs renewed, they can get through really quickly. We have increased staffing to accommodate the increased business, kind of to your question, Simon, and, you know, we'll continue to look at that if the needs increase. Working with MNLAR's motor vehicle licensing system, that's been just a challenge, a very big challenge for us. Investigate implementation of a point of sale system. And then finally, of course, administering the 2018 primary and general elections.
As I've already stated, we transitioned the homestead application process to Hennepin County, and so far that's gone really well. It's been a savings for the city, and the timing was really good. We had our assessing clerk was going to retire at the beginning of July, and that's when we actually transitioned it and stuff. It was suggested by the county that they wanted to take that process back over. It's been with the city for, I don't know, it's been here since I've been here, 22 years. I think it's been here over 30, 40 years, but the county wanted it back. And the major cost in this division is the assessing contract with Hennepin County. They do perform the commercial and residential assessment throughout the city each year and things like that, so.
And self-insurance, risk management, so we increased property casualty rates for 2018 and 2019. And we've also increased the base workers' compensation rates for 2018 and 2019. We had, unfortunately, a relatively bad year. I think it was about 2014, 2015 in workers' comp claims. Sometimes it just happens, unfortunately. And there's a 3-year look-back period, so we're finally now getting back out of that because we have, you know, not had that same type of year since. So we are improving in that regard, and we do take safety very seriously. We do a lot of training, occupational training, fire, police, public works especially. We have a safety committee that inspects all of our facilities, and they make safety recommendations. So we do give it a lot of due diligence. So. Okay. And then information technologies, very important division. They provide a lot of important work to all of us so that we can do our jobs. And so a couple items here: replaced and upgraded several components of the city's network infrastructure, developed and implemented an action plan to be in compliance with payment card industry security standards, and that's actually very involved. A lot of work went into that and is still ongoing. Upgraded the city's Laserfiche records management and retention system. We're finally moving out of paper, and so much more efficiencies. Jared's working with IT on that project. And then the big project is beginning upgrade of our voice over IP telephony system. We're getting all new phones yet this year, and that's a very substantial project. And this is all, I think you probably all recall, but Sally Morton, our longtime IT manager, retired in the spring, and we've got a lot of new staff. So they're doing a great job. You want to?
Building Services Division, basically responsible for the maintenance upkeep of City Hall, Fire Station 2, and the liquor stores. They did work with Bill this year in the renovation of the Penn Avenue store, which is essentially done, I think, isn't it, Bill? They're also working with Bill also with improvements at the South Lindale location. I think a new cooler, new HVAC system, and things like that. That store is approximately 22 years old, I think. So, and I think we are on to public safety.
For public safety budget, looking at 2018, 2019, there's 3 divisions that make up the public safety department. Support services at the top, which is property maintenance, public health, licensing, police, and then emergency services, which is our emergency management division. We're roughly 5% over in 2019, the adopted 2018 budget. Several reasons for those expenditure increases. The personal services increase for 2019 reflect the 3 union collective bargaining agreements that we have within the Public Safety Department. So we have 3 different individual unions within public safety. We have over 20 officers, which is over half our sworn staff that will receive step increases, which is very significant. We also have an increase in one of our line items for dispatch. Dispatch increased, as Chris mentioned, over $40,000 for the next year, which is a significant impact. We also have the increase in professional services due to payment for Logis, which is our consortium that we belong to, that runs our records management system and any software upgrades that we need in the computers in the squad cars. And also increase in health insurance, workers' compensation, and PARA, which is Public Employee Retirement Association. The legislature passed a bill late in the session that increased not only employee, but the employer contribution by 1.2%. And that took a significant hit on our budget. Public safety budget over 2017 to 2019 with a steady increase that Chris talked about already. In our police division, some of the things that we've done over the past year, the second annual bike program in collaboration with Richfield Public Schools, where we give away our impounded bikes to kids in need so that they have transportation either to and from a job or to and from school. We focused on our alternative hiring practices. We've written a grant that we hope we'll get for the Pathways in Policing program, where there's state aid to look at different hiring practices. We've also hired through our cadet program that we have in place and looking at any additional hiring practices. The pool for police officers in the state of Minnesota is significantly down by 20 to 30%, so our hiring pool is very low, so therefore we're looking at any ways that we can bring along new police officers to hire within the city. We created a new policy. We mandated 24 hours of community policing for each officer. That's above and beyond their normal job duties that they have. So they have to get out in the community and interact and participate in programs and go into the schools and go into the businesses and get to know the community that they served. So over the last year, we did over 1,500 hours of community-oriented policing. We expanded some community outreach programs. We started Cops and Bobbers. We had 8 kids this year, where we went down to Taft Park and took kids that have never been experienced with fishing to take them out fishing on the pier and bought them a pole and a little tackle box that they got to take with them. We also this Saturday are going to have cookout with the cops at Washington Park, so that we'll be able to go out there and work with the community and have a little cookout and interact in a positive manner with the neighborhood. And that's a Saturday from 11 to 1. And we also do a Home Alone program, which teaches kids that are usually between the ages of anywhere between 9 to 13, how to function at home alone until their parents come home from work, how to dial 911, police, fire, things like that. And also internet safety for parents, which is always a big hit with what's going on out on the internet with kids and things like that. So we also completed an extensive review of our policy. We have over 200 policies in the police department. And we completed that review this year and issued all new policies to the officers and trained them on them. We had a community-oriented policing policy, our body camera policy, and also we redid our police pursuit policy so that it meets the state standard. Crime trends in Part 1 crimes. Part 1 crimes are those crimes that are serious felonies, such as robbery, burglary, homicide. And if you look from 2007 up to 2017, which is where we get the data. We don't have 18 data yet, obviously, because we don't have the FBI statistics to report. But as you can see, it significantly dropped from where it was in 2007. Part 2 crimes are your shoplifting, theft from vehicles, some of your minor crimes.
Excuse me, Chief, can I just interrupt you just real quick? We've talked about this before, but are these crimes per capita or the number of crimes total in the city proper?
These are the total number of crimes in the city proper.
Just for your benefit and the benefit of those that the density, as density continues to increase, that total amount will, if the percentage can stay the same, but those amounts can creep up. So when you see things flatline, if it flatlines and we have more people here than we did last year, you're actually winning.
Right, correct. And
I just want to point that
and I'll
out for
show you on the
folks.
next slide where that makes the difference, so. Yeah, definitely, if you look at where we were in 2007 compared to where we are in 2017. And this is where you see that difference. You see our calls for service continually creep up. We're over 41,000 calls for service the last year. We had a little dip in 16, but the calls from service from 2009 upward have steadily increased, but the crime rate has stayed low. So that is just us responding to quality of service issues or things like that, or people just want to talk to us. And so that's what we respond out to. So when you,
Coyotes, it's mostly coyotes, right? That's the,
well, coyotes and other things that we have to deal with, so. Dogs, cats, a lot of other things. But when you see that and you see the increase of calls for service, people, what you talked about, is that people automatically think, well, wait a minute, your calls for service are high, so your crime's gonna be high. And that's not necessarily how it works. So even though our calls for service are higher, our crimes have stabilized. And actually they're lower than what they've been in the past 10 years. Our support services division, which is again our property maintenance, our seasonal code enforcement tech, we hired in May. This is our 4th year that we've done this. It's a tech that goes out and proactively looks for violations to make sure that we keep up on our property maintenance within the neighborhoods. It's been tough this year, obviously, with all the construction that's going on within the community. But from May 1st to August 16th, just to give you some statistics, we did 438 proactive violations, and we project the person will be with us here for another 2 weeks. We think we're probably going to hit 538, which is an excellent number for us. And that's not just violations, that's just notices of property maintenance issues. That's not actual where we're going out and citing people. We're just warning them, please take action on these properties. Tobacco 21 passed June 12th, as you know from the council, restricting the sale of tobacco to anyone under 21. We'll be posting a community service officer position in November 2018. Our health administrator, Jennifer Anderson, is also a member of the GARE work that we're doing from a city standpoint, as is Lieutenant Mike Flaherty from the police department. Alcohol and tobacco compliance checks, all licenses passed. We haven't had a violation for over 2.5 years, which is really good for both alcohol and tobacco, knock on wood. So, our emergency services division, we continually grow our engagement of our community emergency response team. I think we're up over 70 volunteers. We're now focused more on a regional team with Minneapolis and Bloomington. These are volunteer residents along with a amateur radio group. And a long time ago, we used to have a radio or amateur radio group and we got rid of it. And now there's been so much interest that we brought it back. And they do a lot of work for us on 4th of July and some of the other events that we have. Provided traffic and security control at numerous community events. Maintenance and replacement of emergency sirens. We haven't replaced some of the sirens since 1950. So some of them are very old, and I just went through our audit yesterday with the county, and he said it's a good thing that you're going to replace these sirens because they're starting to fail, and we can't get parts for them anymore. So over the next 2 years, we have to replace 3 sirens this year and 3 next year at the cost of $110,000. That will be spread out over the next 10 years in our budget, so it's not a one-time impact or a 2-year impact for us, but those do need to be replaced because they obviously provide an outdoor warning system for people who are out in parks or out in their yards or things like that. Police reserve uniforms and equipment maintenance and replacement come out of that budget, and then the reserve coordinator compensation, who also runs our CERT team. and works with them on a daily basis. We also have new technology. We've been working with Logist over the last 5 years to implement our new records management software. And the software was close to $200,000, and we've been paying it for the last 5 years, and it will be fully operational come October. And what that's going to allow us to do is speed up our report writing process for our officers that work in the squad. It's considered field-based reporting, so they'll be able to finish reports a lot quicker and get back to doing things such as community-oriented policing, traffic enforcement, things like that. So it's a large project to manage. I've managed in my career here with the department over 2 different transitions of records management system, and when we had our own dispatch, CAD dispatch, and it's quite an undertaking. It takes that long to put these systems into place and to train and to get them activated. So we're looking forward to that, and as are the officers, because it just streamlines everything that we're able to do out in the field.
Chief, just one question on body cameras as it relates to the budget. I know when we had a work session on this and talked about moving in that direction, one of the big questions or pieces out there is data management, and there's a potential budget component of that. Is that something that's kind of a next year discussion in terms of, or as it relates to the budget and the body camera policy, where does things stand?
Well, the policy itself is ready to go. That's all been implemented, and we follow the legislative guidelines to complete that. Right now, we're just collecting data on the cost of the cameras, what the cost of the backroom equipment's going to be, such as the server, any additional employees that we need to do the redaction if there's data practice requests and things like that. So we have a full-time IT person assigned to the police department that works with us. So we're trying to get those numbers more concrete than just what we think it's going to cost. Because what we found is talking with other departments is that if you don't have the back room ready to go with the server and the things that you need to do the redaction, and you launch the program, the cost to actually get the program where it needs to be is significantly higher. So we're trying to make sure that we get all those things together first. We're probably looking at a year or 2 away.
Okay.
Just because of the cost, I think we ballparked it probably around with what we were told by vendors in additional staff and servers and things like that, probably close to $200,000 to $250,000.
Are there things that the city should be thinking about doing in terms of steps to get there so that there's not, keeping in mind this whole discussion about making sure that we're not seeing big spikes for people? Is that part of a discussion for, maybe, take it off in chunks so there's not a huge line item budget that makes it tough to get this done?
Well, that's why I think we're looking at the next couple of years, because our lease to own portable radios, which is a significant line item budget, they come off in a year or 2. Our mobile radios come off. Our squad cameras come off in another year. So those are 3 big ticket line item issues in our budget. When those come off, then we'll be able to absorb the body cameras and the budget won't fluctuate that much. So, and then we'll work with the finance director to obviously spread those payments out over several budget years so it's not such an impact.
Okay, and this is, I guess this will, I won't be here, but to the extent we can move forward, promptly, given that there's a lot to weigh here, we just put a word in there, when you look at some of the other cities moving forward on that front and what I've heard from the community on it. But we want to do this the right way. So that, as it relates to the budget, that's why I had some questions, because I know there's some big ticket budget items for moving forward with this.
Chief, could I ask, could you share a little bit? I know we saw a staffing budget line item increase because our officers are maturing and they have steps that are coming up. Just as we're looking down the road, we have a young officer core staff, and they're getting older. Should we be thinking prospectively that with the same level of staffing, those costs are going to go up over the next decade? That's just something, as we get a more seasoned force, we should just expect that?
Well, I think as they go through the pay plan step process, I mean, I think it's 5 or 6 steps, I think.
6% per step.
6% per step, and there's like 5 or 6 steps. So once they get to the top step, then it's primarily going to be whatever the bargaining unit negotiations are increases. Am I correct in that?
Correct. And we also will have some cost savings. We're currently going through several promotional processes because some of our command staff who have plus 25 years on will be leaving. So those high pay scales will go down to lower pay scales when newer people are promoted. So there'll be a cost savings there. And sometimes that will offset the step increases.
Yeah, that was my question, just not knowing, so if the median age is 28, versus, 35, just where if we have more seniors that are, how much of that is offsetting? I was just kind of curious. Not a specific number, just kind of anchoring in my mind, we're looking at, because our force is so young, we're looking at that upward pressure for a number of years, or there's enough offsetting that this is kind of anomalous that we'd see a step up like that.
If I might step in, it's the same issue that we're facing in the fire department. And what'll happen is as they get to the top step, you'll stabilize outside of the annual increases, whatever negotiated increases are. But anytime you end up having staff turnover, you're going to end up having people move through those steps, and it'll always be an incremental savings. It's not a huge savings, but you'll have to be planning on for those in the near term. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. I mean, we're looking at the fire department right now, and I've got 5 people going through steps. I've got several people going through longevity increases. And when they hit that first longevity increase in the fire contract, that's an additional 3%. Well, 3% times 4 people, it adds up. Well, that won't happen next year, but it happens this year.
Yeah.
And that'll continue to happen for the next 10, 15 years. So it floats around. So is kind of probably the best way to put it.
So by saying it floats around, does that mean we should some years we're going to be up or some years we're going to be
Yeah.
down because
Yeah.
we're not at a point where we're looking at year after year. I mean, costs change and negotiated, but for that piece, we're not looking at that accelerating year over year for the next 5 years.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with
Yeah,
that.
I mean, that's,
Both of our departments went through huge turnover in probably the last, 10 years?
right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. That's my question.
Okay.
Yeah, so 10 years from now, when they're all senior firefighters and they're all getting ready to retire, you'll have an incremental savings for that first year.
Yep.
And then the next year, it'll keep going up, so.
That's right.
Okay, so welcome to the fire service budget. Personnel in our budget is the overwhelming cost. Personnel services is 85% of our overall budget. You'll notice that the 2019 budget increase is approximately 4% over the 2018 revised. Fire call volume continues to increase at a very slight rate. Fire calls are anything that's not related to an emergency medical call, so it's everything from fire alarms, fires, car fires, hazardous material calls, technical rescues, anything like that. But you'll see that they are steadily increasing. Fire loss save information, we have a very, very high save to loss ratio. And you'll see those figures on the values saved kind of jump around. Well, one year you save a fire in a high-rise building. You take the assessed value of that high-rise building, and if you didn't do anything, you were going to have a fire and you're going to lose that building. So anyway, the key for us is getting early notification. The sooner we get there, the faster we can put the water on the fire, the faster we can put it out, and all the damage goes away. We have a very robust response via strong automatic aid with our surrounding departments. And this is something that the whole Southwest Metro has been doing for about 12 years, and it's worked very well. So we leverage our assets against all of our neighbors' assets, and we basically have a fire department that, I mean, literally we could have 50 fire trucks there in half an hour if we need to, but we don't have to pay for that. So that's a pretty good benefit if you ask me. EMS call volume steadily is increasing, and it will continue to increase due to the demographic mix in the community and also through the increased density that we're adding. You just add more people, you're going to have more emergency medical calls. You'll see that trend. When I started in 2000, we were doing about 3,000 runs a year. Now we're doing over 4,000 consistently, and we'll be approaching 4,400, 4,500 runs. We're doing this with the exact same number of staff on the line that we've had for probably 40 years.
Do we have a graph for number of babies delivered?
No, we don't have a graph for the number of babies delivered. We have one right now this year, so. Yeah, we got a lot of good publicity out of that, and it was a great story. And those are always a very fun call to be on. They're scary, because, you just never know what's gonna happen. But it's always great at the end when you hear the kids crying, it's a good thing. Key highlights out of, yeah.
Can I ask you a quick question
Sure.
about the previous slide, the fire loss save information, which is a new data point for me, which is really interesting. I'm putting you on the spot, it's okay if it's a granular question, but 99% sounds pretty amazing to me.
It's very good. I'm very proud of the fire department.
Can I be even prouder? Do you know how we rank relative to our other first-ring subbers, other community members? How does that, where are we in the pecking order?
So I don't know that data for the other departments. I do know that the way we capture the data, the state fire marshal has named a best practice. A lot of people, when they do fire loss data, it's kind of a guess, or how much is the building worth, where we actually go into the property tax database and pull out the value of the property. Take out the land, because we can't really save the land, so.
Yes.
Unless you're in California. Anyway, and that's where we base our figures on, and then we get the insurance figures, the claim figure.
It's just a great statistic. It helps me talk about how you add value to our community and the cost saving. We love all our public safety and firefighters, but just being able to say, no, there's a real dollar value.
Yeah, there's a real dollar value to what we do. We're an infrastructure in the community.
And if I could tell folks we're so much better than, I won't name the suburbs, but I'd love to be able to do that.
Yeah. Well, we want them to keep coming to help us with our fires.
Especially if it's,
Well, what the city
to do
manager
it,
was
make
alluding to
prove you're
about
wrong.
street stuff, I'll talk to you off the record about that if you ever want to know.
Thank you.
One of the big things that happened, and I'm very proud of this, and you should be very proud of the fire department, is we've attained an Insurance Service Office Classification 2 certification, which doesn't make a huge difference for single-family homes, but it does make an incremental difference for multifamily and commercial properties on the fire portion of their insurance. And that's based on our operation, it's based on Public Works, the water supply, how great a job they do with that, the dispatching, it all, and the fact that we have that robust automatic aid. So that is a big thing. We ran all of our line personnel through the Spanish language training, and they'll be doing quarterly refreshers on that. And it's actually worked pretty well. It was pretty funny. I'm going to share one little story. We were over at the airport for their biannual crash drill, and our folks got tasked to do triage of the people that were injured. So the people that are injured have little tags on their chest as to what's the problem, and the first person they walk up to, she's looking at the tag and they go, hi, my name's Brian and my name's Shay, how can we help you? And she goes, I don't speak English, I speak Spanish. And they go, oh, habla español? And they start whipping all this stuff off, and she goes, I really don't speak Spanish. But it was really interesting that they were actually able to start conversing with her, and it was something that kind of blew them away. It was a good story. We put into service our new Rescue 1. You'll notice the new color scheme. Next year, Engine 2 over on the west side will have the same color scheme as this, and eventually all the engines and vehicles will have that. One of the things we've been doing really hard with our staff is trying to right-size our vehicles and making sure that we're not going over or under, and they really work properly for our mission. So the back of on the side of our trucks, it all says fire. So everybody thinks fire, fire, fire. And that's what a firefighter does. I mean, we love fire. But it's not just about fire. And to allude to like Chief Henthorn, community policing, we're trying to be out in the community more, trying to work harder, educating people about fire prevention, wellness, trying to keep people in their homes. And the other thing is, you never know what's going to happen next. One of my first fire chief, when I was a rookie, he said, we're in the worst day of people's life business. And that's kind of when you think about it, when that problem gets too big, that's when they call 911, whether it's for the police or whether it's for fire. And we get all the stuff that they don't get. We get somebody's water mains broke, the laundry lines broke, they've got gas in their house. somebody's injured on the top of the high school and we need to get them off to the medics, you never know what's gonna happen next. And you never know when it's gonna happen. So that's the fire department. And we like getting dirty, so. Any questions?
All right, thank you. So here's the community development budget. Currently, community development has 21 employees, 17 full-time and 4 part-time. This includes an additional building inspector that we added this year. Of these employees, there are a handful that really the city doesn't pay for. Either the federal government pays for Section 8 employees, or the HRA pays for a number of employees as well. We have 3 divisions, CD administration, planning and zoning, and inspections. The CD administration is really just an accounting division, and you'll see that as I go through this. The proposed budget is a little over 1.5 million. This is a 10% increase from the 2018 budget. This is the biggest increase we've seen since the year 2011, when we took inspections over from public safety. The increase is due to the addition of a new building inspector and increased health insurance costs. Those are the primary reasons. And if you look at previous increases, last year it was a little over 1%, the year before a little over 1%. So they've been pretty modest. And I'll get back to the 10% increase in a minute. And this shows you at the bottom the 3 divisions, but I'm going to go into detail on them. So I'm going to tell you this budget is really boring that I've got to present to you tonight. A lot of the exciting things that community development does is on the HRA side of things. We gave the HRA budget presentation a couple of weeks ago. If you guys haven't seen it and want the slides, I'll get them to you certainly. But again, kind of boring stuff otherwise. Almost all of our expenses are salaries, benefits, and non-discretionary costs. So 90% of our costs are things we really can't do much about. I pulled a quote out of last year's budget presentation, which was business as usual. This year, my quote is busier than ever. We've just got so much going on, historic development highs. And, we've talked, so a number of us have been talking to reporters a lot the last couple of days, and they keep asking me, was this the city's biggest development boom ever? Probably not. 99, 2000, 2001 was probably a little bit bigger. The difference is that was 1 or 2 really big projects. I mean, Best Buy was, $160 million project by itself. This is a bigger variety of projects. They're everything. It's housing and retail and some office, so it's a little bit of everything. It's keeping us really busy. The other difference is back when in 99, 2000, 2001, I don't think we were seeing the same kind of spin-off effect. What we're seeing now is when all this big commercial development is going on, we're getting more and more and more homeowners coming in saying, I'm doing an addition, I'm doing improvements. That's really up as well. And all this stuff has become more complicated, all the land use applications and those kinds of things.
John, if I could just jump in, one of the things I would say is that when you look at what's going on now compared to, when the Best Buy project and such were going on, that was like concentrated in one area. But this is the first time I can ever remember when you can go from border to border in Richfield.
Yep.
And there's something happening everywhere, or there's interest on something that's going to be happening everywhere across the city. That's never happened before, to my knowledge.
Yeah, and, I don't want to overpromise, but the other thing that's different is I'm having so many more conversations with developers. So we're going to be bringing, it's not slowing down. We're going to keep bringing stuff into you for the next foreseeable future. I'd mentioned the administrative division, which is pretty much an accounting thing. Really what it comes down to is on the HRA side, we've got like 20 different budgets. And as soon as we start monkeying around with staff time on this one should be this and this much should be this. It really makes things complicated. So what we do is we throw all the staff costs into the administrative division budget, and then each project credits that for the time. It also pays for the department's utilities and insurance. And so you'll see here the costs for 2019 are $66,740. Guess what the utilities and insurance are? $66,740. That's because, again, we charge personnel costs here, but then we credit them from other projects. Our planning and zoning division, this is Melissa Paleman, Matt Brillhart, and Sadie Gannett that you may know. Their core responsibilities are to be the staff liaisons to our planning commission, maintain and amend the comprehensive plan. That's at the Met Council. Now, our neighboring communities have had a chance to look at it. We haven't heard any comments. That's going well. We were one of the first cities to have ours in. There are still some cities that probably are where we were a year and a half ago. So we feel good about that. And we try to proactively update and amend our land use codes to remain relevant, and that saves us time in the long run. The land use applications, as I've said, they've been getting more complicated all the time, whether it's comp plans, rezoning, site plan approvals, all those kinds of things, many of which ultimately come to you for a decision. Here are the numbers over time, over the last few years anyway. This one is up about 4.5 or 5%. I think this is more telling how we spend our money. 84% on salaries and benefits, 6% on professional services. The professional services are consultants we bring in to help us on things. Everything else are things, again, out of our control, really. The professional development and memberships, some of that's required for us to do our jobs by the state. And that's gone up a little bit over the past couple of years. We did hire a new employee last year, and that brought that up a bit. The inspections division, enforcing the state building code. What I don't have on here, it's not just enforcing the building code, it's the plan review. And I'll tell you, for the Chamberlain Apartments, I was there the day when the plans were delivered. And they're the big sheets that are like 4 feet by 3 feet. The stack was about 7 inches high. If I tried to lift it, it's maybe 85 to 100 pounds of plans. They have to go through every single page and review everything on every page to make sure it's compliant with codes. It's incredibly, incredibly detailed work that they do that probably the average person would have no idea that they do. And so on the front end, they've got to go through and review all those plans. And then on the back end, they've got to go onto the sites with those plans and make sure the contractors are doing what they said they were going to do. There's construction education and licensing that happens. Our point of sale inspections, there's 600 to 800 annually. One of the problems we have in Richfield, if you talk to our real estate agents, is that we have a tremendously low inventory. People are not selling their houses because they know what good values they are. And so that's a challenge for our real estate folks, but I think it bodes well for us. Rental licensing, about 1,100 units. That's going to get more complicated with some of the naturally occurring affordable housing initiatives that we're taking on. And I'm going to touch on this next piece here a little bit more. Hold on. So on the, you'll see here the expenditures, and that was, the expenditures are up 12.1%, but what you have to remember is that our revenues are up a projected 13.7%. So really it's a net decrease in costs. So on the budget, we're saying we've got a 10% increase, but if the revenues are going up 11%, that's a little easier to swallow. Again, here's how the money's spent. 81% on salaries and benefits, 8% on professional services, 3.2% on IT. again, not a lot of meat on the bone, not a lot of things. And and I'm not speaking for myself, for all the department directors, we really go through every line item and we ask ourselves, how can we save the Richfield taxpayers money? And there is not a lot of meat on the bone for us to find places. And you'll see the sharp increase from 18 to 19 is adding that additional employee. That's it for me. Are there questions?
Quick question, maybe this is more of an HRA question, but as it relates to housing, I know around this time last year when we were talking about budgets, there was a lot of change in terms of the CD and housing staffing, and so we sort of parked that despite this big need and this new focus with naturally occurring affordable housing. And so, and especially given how busy generally it is, which is a good thing. I'm just wondering thoughts on our staffing level in terms of our housing work. You know, some of that proactive work we've discussed about in terms of recognizing properties and those types of things, and you know the new ordinances we're considering. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so we did have some transitions when staff left. We brought new people in. I feel really good about where we're at on programs that we currently do. I think we've got everything covered. Where we fall short is if we say we're going to add some new things. And we've talked a little bit in the past about business development initiatives. We're not staffed for that. So if we all of a sudden picked up some new, business programs, we would need to look at increasing the staffing for that. When we added this additional inspector, the biggest challenge we had was finding a place to put them. And so Pam and Dave Conrads and I have been spending a lot of time trying to carve out spaces, and it's just really one of physical room and where we put somebody. But again, for what we are currently doing, I feel very good about the staffing levels.
I guess one follow-up. Do you think are we staffed adequately to do some of that proactive work that we've discussed in terms of identifying potential buildings that are at risk, naturally occurring affordable housing, and coordinating with the schools in terms of kids and kind of creating that prioritization that's been discussed as things that, without any ordinance change, is pretty vital for our naturally occurring affordable housing work?
What we think you'll see, and we're going to be bringing some of these ordinances to you in the next couple of meetings, we're trying to find ways of institutionalizing the reporting so that they're not as staff intensive. So when buildings go up for sale, that there's something with the Hennepin County Assessor's Office that when a sale occurs, just through IT, boom, we're notified of that. And so we're trying to make this more institutional than staff-driven wherever we can. But some of it, quite honestly, is kind of wait and see. We won't know until we're up and running with some of these programs if everything's going to work.
And beyond the ordinances, in terms of just the, I know that we've discussed getting a sense of the catalog of the existing housing and who owns what and what's potentially at risk. And that seems like work that isn't necessarily ordinance work, but could be pretty time intensive or staff intensive. And do we have the adequate capacity to, with all that's going on, to be proactive and to be kind of doing that work?
Well, I think that that's really relationship work. That's having good relationships with the apartment management community, with owners out there, with tenants out there. And so what I would say is we have the capabilities on our staff currently to do that. And like I said, I think we're going to find out soon whether we have the capacity. I think if it is a capacity issue, probably what we'd look at doing is hiring some lower level employees to take some of the more mundane tasks so that the existing employees that have those built relationships already can develop those better.
Okay, thanks, that's helpful.
I had a question about, in addition to a question, just hats off and good job and thank you. You're stewarding and shepherding, a really great time in Richfield. So thank you for that.
Well, it really is such a group effort, and like the work that Kristen does on the roads.
Yes.
That I've always looked at roads and redevelopment is kind of like two sides of the same coin. They just go together.
Absolutely. Yes. And thank you, Kristen, for that too. Yeah, I 100% agree. One thing I was going to mention, a local restaurant owner pointed this out to me, and I was just going to share this with everybody, the liquor licensing fee. He told me it was something like $15,000 per year, which he said was relatively higher than other communities. And particularly for new restaurants coming in, and I think a lot of how we're developing, we have some big boulders that are coming in, and part of what can really drive the kind of development that we want is really great local independent restaurants. And that fee, assuming that it's true, I'm just, this is received wisdom, if it is any wisdom, if it's relatively higher than other folks and it's a barrier. I think there are a lot of things that are happening in the community that would make Richfield a really attractive place for smaller folks, and if that's a one-time fee for folks, and if Sandy's Tavern is paying the same kind of fee that Houlihan's is paying and that sort of thing, just, I wonder if that might be something that we could modify or look at, just something to consider in how we recover that fee.
So I'll let Chief Henthorn.
Those discussions have already started with city manager. They're gonna involve Chris, because there's one size fits all.
Yeah.
And you're exactly correct. They don't tax by volume. They tax by license, which is horribly inequitable.
But, I will tell you that there are some things that Richfield is more expensive on than other communities, and there are some things we're less expensive on. There's some things we're stricter on, some things we're more lenient on. Odor control, people despise coming to Richfield over odor control. Our odor control requirements are much more stringent than other places, and we, a couple of years ago, we made them a little more lenient. On the other hand, there aren't a lot of communities that are as developed the way we are, that have as much residential and as much proximity to restaurants. And so those are policy things that we always try to bring to you, and we will try to bring back to you on occasion to make sure we're all on the same page.
I don't know that I would accept odor control as horrible. I mean, there were some developments made where you can build in the infrastructure and engineer it with the capability of addressing that if it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't sit at the desk and take the calls, but I know that there's not very many reports passed on to me or the city council of issues, given some of the conversations we've had with neighbors when the new buffet went in the Old Country Buffet and stuff. So whatever we're doing may be onerous if you have to take it the whole 9 yards, but we don't automatically assess that cost right up front in anticipation of what's happening. So I think in that sense, we are much more flexible than we were 5 or 6 years ago.
Well, so I would just say the point I was trying to make is on the expense side. There are some aspects that were more expensive, some aspects that were less expensive. I think when we look at the big picture, when we talk to developers, we are overall very competitive. And we do try to continue to look at that. And I don't know if on the liquor piece.
You have a strong command presence, Chief. We know we can hear you.
Me and technology. We're looking at the liquor licenses. I mean, there's the hard intoxicating liquor, there's the wine, and there's the beer too. So you're right around the ballpark of where that intoxicating liquor is. The price for that license is per year.
Yep.
So, we're taking a look at that. I can tell you we haven't raised it for probably close to 15 years. And that's dating back when Betsy Osborne was here. So, it's been pretty stagnant for a long time. But depending upon what license they have, they pay that flat rate fee.
Well, I'll just say this. I think in the next 3 to 5 years, there are going to be a ton of restaurants that are leaving our suburb to the north. And we have a strategic opportunity to be hospitable. They're going to go somewhere. I'd love for them to come to Richfield. And I think I'll just put my 2 cents in, and I can't say this serially, so it's just as an opportunity to say this out loud. I think we have a really strong opportunity to make a great home for a lot of amazing small independent restaurants. And so anything we can do to look at that fee, not that we don't make it up in other areas, but I think I tend to agree with the constituent that mentioned something. This is a great opportunity. They weren't saying because you could bring a bunch of competitors into Richfield, but I think we could do that and really push food culture forward at Richfield. So.
Well, I'm pleased to bring the liquor operations budget to you. I picked out 4 areas that probably are the most important, especially in the last year and this year to come. And they would be sales, our capital improvements, merchandising, and branding. Sales this year began with a huge increase, mostly because of the Super Bowl. I mean, there were a lot of people that were in the area, especially along the Strip. We were way up in sales, and then we ended up, for July, we're only up about 1.3%, and most of that is devoted to the Penn closure, which is down, right now is down 37%. However, when we opened up in July, it's showing steady increases. It's back, the business is back to what it was doing when we closed, and it's showing some slow increases. I'm saying that most of that is because a lot of the construction on 66th Street, both the 64th and Lindale location, which still is, it was doing well until the roundabout construction. And I think as soon as that's all closed up, we'll get back to normal, and I'm not blaming you. But anyways, as far as that goes, our store at 77th and Lindale has just got a shot of energy in the last couple of months, and I think it's due to some of the new businesses that are opening, and then I look forward to seeing some more changes in that shopping center. We've got a new manager at the 77th Lindale store. She's a fireball, and she has really done a lot of work there to make the customers happy and get her crew up and running. The second area is capital improvements. We did a lot in the last year, and we still got quite a bit to do. We had a new outdoor dynamic sign at our 64th and Lindale location. We did the total upgrade at the Penn Avenue store. We did some exterior signage. I got a photo of that at the 77th Street store. And we've got more signage coming at Lindale. Penn Avenue just got their outdoor dynamic signs, so, and all of them have the new graphics on them. They really look sharp, especially, say, right about dusk, when the lights go on. We're planning a roof replacement and HVAC and cooler mechanicals at the 77th Street store. We've taken out the pedestal sign that's right on Lindale, and we plan to relocate that to where there was once a pay telephone. It's right, there's a little island, and it'll be more visible when you're looking towards the east in the shopping center. And we've got some other wall signage that's going to be replaced at the 77th Street store. Here's some of the pictures of the new signage, all with our new graphics. I'm particularly happy with our bike racks now outside. They've got little wine glasses on them. And a lot of good customer reaction. Not all of them are riding bikes, but they see them outside. And the Penn store, geez, what a revitalization of that. It's like you're in a totally different store. The merchandising end, we can sell liquor all day and sell beer and sell wine, but there's some areas there's some opportunities to gain a little bit more profit, and that's with ancillary merchandise. We've put in, nice wine glasses that are attractive. They're not very expensive. The investment on those is very low, and the margin is a lot better than the spirits end of it. Gift bags, things that people they're standing up at the cash register ready to check out, and they pick those up. So it's an added sale. And another thing we've done too is we've put more attention into the stackings of our merchandise. Instead of just throwing it on the floor, cutting the box open, we've utilized wood crates. I had that picture back here. The first aisles look totally different. We've got baskets and crates. They're all uniform signage. We don't let any of the vendors place their signs on it. We do all of ours with our logo on them. So most of the signage in the store that's semi-permanent is done by us and has got our branding on it. And that's another area, branding. As we replace the shopping carts, it's got our logo on it, the shopping baskets. All of our staff now are wearing some really sharp polo shirts with the Richfield logo on them. And it really looks professional. He's wearing a liquor store shirt? Also, when we send out our drop mailings now, any advertising we do now has our logo on it. It's identifiable, and I think it's well received by the customers. Everything is neat, uniform, and I hope that we end up this year with some increases that were similar to last year. Last year, our year-end sales were 11.3 million. That was up about 800,000. A lot of the 800,000 is because Cedar was closed the previous year for a couple of weeks. But we see an increase in our customer counts when there's not road construction. And that's about it. Has anybody any questions?
Can you hear me? Okay, good evening, thanks. This is going to be Public Works. All right, I should just keep it right here. Well, our mission is to sustain and improve the quality of life for the residents in Richfield, so that's our business. We've got about 50 core employees. We increase about 20% in the summer months with our seasonals. We've got 8 divisions, 4 that are general fund. So we're expending about 20 million, almost 21 million a year with our 8 divisions. For our 4 general fund divisions, between this year and last year, we've kind of, we're busy, but it is kind of business as usual as far as the budget goes. We haven't added people, we haven't lost people, our services haven't changed, so our numbers are pretty consistent. We almost hit exactly the 0 and 3%, but we tried. So I don't know if there's any questions on our staff, but about 55% of the general fund is personnel for Public Works. And then basically we have 8 people between admin and engineering that are providing services and delivering projects that are funded outside of the general fund. And a lot of their personnel costs are actually funded outside of the general fund as well. And then streets and parks, their biggest, aside from personnel, their biggest expenditures would be like street lighting, electricity costs, and contracted services for kind of landscaping in the right-of-way and snow removal. Our capital improvements, we talked about this earlier with Chris and Steve, so I won't spend any time on it. 77th Street underpass and Lindale Avenue are scheduled to begin this spring, if everything goes well. The mill and overlay is over halfway done, and that's been going well. 66th Street should wrap up next year with the landscaping and a little bit of construction. And then I'll talk a little bit more about the infrastructure, but I think we talked quite a bit about that. This is just kind of a summary of what we get. So our reactive work orders, so when we get phone calls from residents, these are the calls that we're getting. So in the year 2017 by month, the top chart shows the number of calls that we received. The green line is utility-related phone calls, and the red line is our operations. So in January, we had a total of 168 calls that we responded to. And the bottom chart just kind of shows the categories. So we do a lot of lights and signs responding. Street lights go out. That's how we know. Typically, somebody will give us a call. Forestry, there's a lot of interaction with the residents on their trees. And the utilities, the water issues, bar graph, the line is quite large. We have had issues with our water meters for many, many years, and that's always a water meter issue that we're reacting to, and we are scheduled to start a water meter replacement next year. That's in the budget. We're still trying to figure out which meters we're going to go with. These are internal projects, so we will do these with our internal staff, and that will save contract money. It keeps the budget down. We don't have to pay a contractor to come and put new signs in the parks or install a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. The list is long, or not as long this year because we had a really late spring and we've been short-staffed by 2 public works workers this year. But we try to get as much projects done as we can internally. Chris pretty much covered what we're doing with our fleet, and he even mentioned that we are getting those hybrid vehicles, which I was gonna say. So inspections is going electric next year. I think you knew that, right? Okay, well, now you know, surprise.
Tim pay you to add the Mitsubishi?
No,
Okay, just checking.
he might have paid Chris Link, he's the one that gave me the picture. But no, so inspections is going electric. I don't know if there were any questions on the fleet, though, first of all. I don't know, it's just kind of, we try to keep it, the Public Works Department services and does the purchasing for all the fleet in the city, including police and fire, and we've got about just under 200 units that we deal with. We try to keep the purchases similar from year to year, the total amount, so there's not a big spike in anything, but you can't always do that. But then I said the 4 inspectors' vehicles will be coming in next year, and we're kind of hoping, and I think there's some discussions that in 2020 we might be considering some hybrid interceptors for the police department, but we'll be talking about that this year, or next year, I guess. Let's see, utilities. I'm gonna follow my notes here. Okay. Utilities, we've got about $12.5 million of expenditures in between the 3 to produce the water and then take care of the disposal, and then also the stormwater, being responsive and proactive and with our stormwater and our water quality. Mostly everything's pretty set. There's an increase here in water utility from the adopted. That's basically, we did some water main assessments of the water mains underneath 35W, and I'm actually going to present the results tonight. And then we've got a sharper increase from our adopted to proposed. That is the water meter upgrade that we're anticipating. That's about $1 million we have budgeted for next year, and that's also an emergency interconnect. There was I think $750,000 budgeted for next year. If we find out if we're gonna go with Bloomington or Minneapolis, we have it budgeted. Right now I'm not, we haven't figured it, we haven't come to an agreement with anyone, so I don't know how likely it will actually happen next year, but it's budgeted. And then the increase in our wastewater from the adapted to the proposed was reflective of what was anticipated 11% increase of our Metro Council Environmental Services charge, which is 60% of our wastewater budget goes directly to the Metropolitan Council for the disposal of the wastewater. They had projected an 11% increase, but it's been adjusted now to a 1.5% decrease. So this number is actually like 0. So that's good news. Oh, well, and just overall, the water use in Richfield keeps declining. So our revenues decline with it, but the cost to make the water doesn't even stay equal. It typically goes up a little bit. And all of the rate increases I'll show you for 2019 are reflective of what the Ehlers rate study that they completed in 2017 had recommended. So I basically just took whatever they recommended and put it in here. So the water fund, this is our conservation rate structure. Every tier has an increase. And I have a dollar amount. So tier 1, which is 60% of our accounts, will see approximately a $2.63 per quarter increase with that rate structure. Our rates remain competitive. I don't know if there's any questions on the water rates. Nope. This is a map of Richfield. Our water main went in the 1960s, and we've started tracking water main breaks in the early 70s. These are all the breaks that we've had on our system. I just thought it was kind of interesting to see, since we're talking about infrastructure, and what we're trying to do with our water is figure out how do we renew it if it needs it. So you can see in the northwest corner of the city, we have different soils up there. I think that's indicative of our break. I think we'll do more investigating up here on how we best tackle that. And I don't think we'll be doing too many water main replacements down in this side of town right now. But we're just in the beginning stages of assessing our water main. And one thing that we did this year was we did a water main assessment of our 3 crossings under 35W. And if I get too nerdy, Steve, you have like a signal for me? Okay. So we did a non-invasive assessment of these 3 crossings, and that's basically an acoustic technology in the 4 areas. We actually did the 3 crossings, and these are the only 3 pipes that serve the whole west side. So they're critical to our water supply. And then we also did the pipe under 65th Street that goes from 66 to Nicollet, which is part of the reconstruction project that's been identified, just to see what condition that is in, why replace it if it's in good condition. It's an expensive part of that project. So the results came in, I don't know, okay, I guess. I mean, it's good to know what we've got. This pipe here on 73rd is basically, we need to replace it next year. That was the recommendation. It's lost 30% of its pipe thickness, which puts it in poor condition. The other 2 crossings of 35W are moderate. They say within 5 to 10 years, so we should be scheduling these. None of this is reflected in any of the budgets because we just found this out like a week and a half ago. So you'll see that in the CIP next year. The 65th Street pipe is in good condition. We have to, there was a question in the report. I was noticing that they want to make sure that they had the right, they didn't have any as-built data. Okay, I'm getting nerdy, I'll stop. But we're going to verify that that's actually in good condition. But this is where it goes under the hub, and there's a utility easement under the hub that we'd like to get released so they can utilize their property however they see fit. That's part of the 65th Street project, is to relocate the main, and the only part that is initially in moderate condition is right there. Okay, I'll move on. Our wastewater rates, the increase is just like Ellers had suggested, and it's about $3.83 per property per quarter. As an average user, at 7,500 gallons. I don't have much else to add here, except that it's still more expensive to take care and dispose of the water that people use than it is for them to buy the actual water that they drink, which I think is backwards. So here's our sanitary sewer lining, this is our sanitary system. And at the last council meeting, the council approved upwards of $400,000 for a sewer lining project, which I'm super excited about because it's the first one and it's the first step into renewing our sewer system, which is old and needs to be replaced. This is where we're going to be focusing, so that's $400,000 worth of work, which gets us about 3.2% of the city done. So what we have scheduled is, our budgeted is $200,000 a year towards this project, which would be a 40-year project. We're expecting to advance that or accelerate at some point, but at least this is progress, so I'm happy that we're doing something. What it's going to look like, and they should probably be doing this next year. So they have until sometime in 2019 to finish the project, but they have to, once they start, they have to have it completed in 60 days. This is what it will look like. It's trenchless, so it's a little bit similar to what Met Council did, except Met Council rebuilt a lot of their structures along 66th Street. This is trenchless. They go in, they clean the pipe, they put in this resin sock, and then they cure it with hot water. They fill it up, and you end up with a brand new pipe, and then a robot will go in, and it'll cut the service lines open, and then we'll be back in business. So we're getting, we're happening. This is just a picture of what we see typically in our existing sewer line. That's a root, and we're constantly cutting roots. Any questions on that? Okay. Our stormwater fee is, again, based on Ellers, at $1.24 per quarter for a residential household. And what we've done with stormwater this year is we did an assessment of about 15% of our manhole structures only. This isn't a pipe assessment. We're still trying to figure out where our hot spots are with the pipes, but the structures themselves, we looked at 243 manhole structures, and 28 of them were in good condition. 196 should be repaired within 5 years, and then the remainder should be done within 3. So we'll be looking at programming that and seeing how that would look, and we don't anticipate digging up every manhole structure. There are new technologies now where we can just kind of line them and cure them in place, similar to what we've done with the sanitary, so. And we'll continue to assess the rest of the manhole structures as well. And then I just wanted to touch on the streetlight user fee that was enacted and instituted in 2009. We increased it slightly in 2012. Haven't touched it since, and it covers our electricity costs and some maintenance costs almost exactly. So that's what the rate is. It's us. Any questions? Where are you? I'm hiding over here. I was doing irrigation that day, so I dressed down. And this is a picture, actually, we were handing money off. We had raised money at our barbecue for MACV, and that was them, and they were super pumped, so we took a picture with everybody. All right.
Recreation, last but not least. So I'm going to give you some highlights of the department for this year, mainly through photos here first. And what you're seeing here is our brand new kayak launch and our paddle port where we're renting out kayaks there at Taft Park. We just had an event to kick this off a couple weeks ago. Thank you, Mayor, for attending that. Appreciate that. What's cool about this is we've added a whole new recreation activity for the residents of Ridgefield here that wasn't there before. Another new recreation activity that we're providing for residents is curling. We started curling this summer, and man, it's been really popular. I think it's going to continue to grow and be here as a permanent thing in Ridgefield. What I love about this is it brings a whole new user to the ice arena. It's not all about hockey, but we've got a whole new user, and that's very exciting. Another new activity that we're providing our residents was funded by Marlene Glaus. It's our wildlife outlook at Wood Lake Nature Center. And this provides a whole new outdoor classroom for the kids that we teach at Wood Lake on a day-to-day basis. It's used for other things too, but again, a new recreational activity that we're offering to the residents. We're also, right as we speak, raising our trail in the southwest corner of Wood Lake Nature Center. That trail has been prone to flooding. We have a lot of people that use our perimeter trail, and this will help keep it open much more. We've expanded our Honoring All Veterans Memorial. As you can see, is this the, yep, there. This is the area that we added. And so basically it's a walkway to the back of one set of tablets. It's lighted at night, so we can start, when we filled the one side, we can start engraving on the back sides here. And, which provides a funding source, an ongoing fundraising source for this facility. Here's the band shell. I think it'll be done this month. So every time I go and look at it, I'm just liking what I see, and I think it's something that we'll be proud of. So taking a look at some of the things that we measure our performance on, when you register for a recreation program that's counted as one registration, it might be a program that lasts for several months, that sort of thing. But if one person attending a program, we have over 29,000. So we get a lot of participation in our programs. Wood Lake Nature Center, same thing, program visits 22,000. That's for people that register for programs, and it's also for people that do drop-in programs. So again, our participation continues to grow in our programs. It's not growing leaps and bounds, but it's a steady growth. And some programs, you know, get stagnant, and then eventually we drop them, and we're always creating new programs. So our programs are getting used by our residents. We sold 40 engravings this year, and our recreation programs really wouldn't happen, and our events really wouldn't happen without volunteers. And really, Wood Lake Nature Center is the best example of that. We have most of our volunteer office hours through Wood Lake Nature Center, 4,200 hours that we clocked in for Wood Lake Nature Center programs and events. That equates to about $103,000 saved if we were to pay people for that work. So this is a collage of events that we do. We put a lot of effort and a lot of our time into providing community events, and these are all significant events. The one right here, we have Penn Open Streets at Penn Fest starting in a week and a half from now. It's a good example. But we do about an average of 2 events per month. And so that's something that residents have and something that makes Richfield unique and something that really enhances the lives of residents are these events. And I know many of you council members have been to these events, have supported them. I can just tell by your hats off to Hometown Hits that this is a big part of Richfield, so I'm proud of that. Okay, so I'm going to talk numbers for a while here. We'll start with our general fund budget. So we're presenting 2 budgets for you today. The general fund budget in recreation has 3 divisions. Wood Lake Nature Center, we have our recreation programs, and then we have a smaller administration budget. So when you add those 3 together, here's what's happening. It looks like our expenditures are going down this year from what we had planned, and just a very slight increase for 2019. But the big story here is our revenues. Our revenues are going down quite a bit this year and for next year, and it's a result of changes in 3 programs that we're going to talk about. One in Wood Lake Nature Center and the other 2 in the recreation division. So looking at the administration, not a lot of activity here, a slight decrease in our expenditures. There are no revenues with this. This is basically our insurance, our registration software, our brochure, that sort of thing. So a very modest increase in expenses for 2019. But then let's look at our program, recreation program division. So you can see that our revenues are taking a big drop here this year and next year, and it's mainly due, it's to the tune of $30,000. And so there are 2 particular programs that one is discontinued. It's our joint preschool program that we do with the school. It's called Wiggles and Giggles. That's been a preschool program that we've done with them for years and years, and we've closed it because of lack of participation as a result of the school launching a free preschool program. And so you can't be sad about that. The preschool program was great for Richfield, but our fee-based preschool program just can't compete with free. So we've decided to part, and so that makes a big hit on our budget. Another is our adult softball leagues, and there's a high margin to our adult softball. We make money providing that, and we are declining in that area, and it's not just Richfield based. It's really an industry trend, and so our neighbors, our neighboring cities have been seeing declines, steady declines in adult softball leagues, in the past decade. We haven't seen that much of a decrease because of our location. So we've been stealing adult softball players from other communities. And so it's catching up to us. So we're just seeing a decline in there. And what we know or what we believe is that the reason for that is our young adults, they just have much more recreational opportunities, much more recreational choices. And so do their kids. So that takes them away from the softball field. And so that's the result of our revenue going down. Our expenses go down a little because we don't have the expenses to run those programs as.
Jim, can I jump in and ask a
Yes.
quick question? Do you have any sense, is it organized recreation across the board that's going down for adults? Or are there alternatives? Is soccer field usage up? I'm just curious, in terms of we have the space, is it being utilized in the best possible way? Are there other sports that people?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think that participation in the other sports for adults is going up. And like I said, there's more choices. So now, the example is kayaking. Now we have kayaking available. And so there's that choice that you can get involved with. And people are just, spending less time with softball. So it's hard to say where that participation is going specifically, but that's what I think the reason that our softball programs are declining. And then I'll turn it over to Karen for Wood Lake.
Well, as you can see in the budget, there's no room for Kristen to order me an all-electric car, so that's really sad. That would be fun. If you look at our revised and proposed expenditures, we were up just a little bit in revised and a little bit more in proposed. And we are down a bit in revenue that in both years, about the same. Medical leave, my fault, that's what cost some money, but we did have workman's compensation will go down quite a bit next year. That our load is going to, as those things work out. We did add camera surveillance. I will say that the initial price was $23,000 when we first put in the cameras, but now the upgrade was just $6,000, and the computers are so much more. They're just easier if we have to send something to public safety. It's just a click of a button and we can send it over there. We do have a handicap accessible doors. Again, my fault, but people have really appreciated having that amenity. We did lose some revenue because of two things. Community gardens were discontinued. There was construction there, and we just looked at the records, and we were only serving about 40% Richfield residents in our community gardens. There was a lot of vandalism. The costs were really going up, and we're still looking at different models for that. But that was about $6,000 to $7,000 a year in revenue, although the revenues probably decreased by pretty steadily in the last 3 years because it wasn't as popular. Candlelight and Ice was canceled. It was 27 below zero. We thought that was a good public safety thing to do. Anybody have any questions?
Okay, now we're going to move on to our recreation, or our special revenue funds. These are the things that are offered out of our community park at Veterans Park, our ice arena, our outdoor pool, the mini golf facility, and then the rental of our vets shelter. And this is Chris Wybe's area. He's not here tonight because he's at the ice arena managers conference. So I'm pitching for him. So if you add all those three divisions together, you can quite clearly see that we're up about 10% in our revenues and up about 10% in our uses. And there's a very simple explanation for you that I'll explain. But I want you to direct your attention down to the bottom column here. So this column is the difference between our revenues, our sources, and our expenses, our uses. And so our adopted budget, we were planning a $175,000 improvement to our fund balance. And so as a result of these added expenses and decrease in revenue. We're only planning this year on a $166,000 improvement to our fund balance. Next year, we're back on track with a $212,000 improvement. Now, you might think, wow, the special revenue funds are making a lot of money. Well, we actually do receive a subsidy from our general fund for each 3 of these. And so that's why we look really good. Okay, let's look at specifically with Ice Arena, and this is the reason for the differences in our adopted budget. Basically, we decided to take $170,000 out of our CIP money for dasher boards. And we were going to do our dasher boards with our refrigeration project. It was included in that, but we came to the conclusion early this year that there was a risk management issue with our dasher boards. They were unsafe. They needed to be replaced. So we did that. So we added $170,000 to our revenues for the ice arena, and we added $170,000 to the uses. So that's basically what happened with this budget and the big difference. There's another change that there's another reduction in revenue from our renter for the training facility. Earlier this year, our vendor went out of business, and so we had to look for another person, another company to take over renting that training facility. That's the old Hattrick Hockey location. And we found somebody, and it took them a couple months to get on board. They made some improvements. They're doing very well now, but there's loss of some revenue for a couple months where we weren't renting that facility out as a result of the first one going out of business. So that's the ice arena budget. Let's look at the outdoor pool. So I'll tell you right now that we're having a good year at the pool, or we had a good year. Our revenue has gone up $5,000 in our rental revenue. We've got more swim team use, and we're just fitting more teams into the time schedule that we had. We just have a modest 2% increase in the proposed pool expenditures for 2019. So let's take a look at what happened specifically at the pool. We'll compare 2016, which is a banner year. That was a great year. Perfect weather, perfect summer for pool operation. Then there was 2017, was totally opposite. Terrible year, lots of storms, cold, and then this year, pretty good year. So what's happened is in the course of the last 3 years, a lot of our revenue is shifting from season passes to daily admission. So, and you can see it in the numbers here. This was our daily admission on just a banner year, and we outperformed that quite a bit this year. This is the number of people that came in that had purchased a pass, and so we counted their attendance. Lower attendance on the people coming in with pool passes. Greater numbers of pool passes sold, but a lot of our people came in on daily passes, and that resulted in great revenue increase. So we're happy with that, but that's a trend, and you could argue that after a bad year, people are thinking, well, I didn't use the pool that much, and maybe I'll just do daily passes this year. So, Okay, lastly is our special facilities budget. Not much to tell here. It's a pretty stable budget. Our revenues and our expenses are about what we thought for both this year and next year. Any questions about the recreation budget?
I'll just say this because it's a deep desire in my heart. I know we're going to look at a couple of, improving a couple of parks, a splash pad anywhere in those. We have them in South Minneapolis, we have them in Bloomington. I think they would add a lot of value, especially for Richfield families that can't afford the pool, and that I think it would be great. So I'll just put that out there into the universe.
Well, and a lot of communities have those, absolutely.
I will say this on a more positive note. As my kids get older, we use more and more of the recreational services, and they're just tremendous. And it's really instrumental in making Richfield the kind of place that it is. And I recognize that more and more every year my kids get older. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Simon.
That's it.
Well, no, this is not a question because I'm leaving after this. But I just really wanted to say, you know, I mean, what we've got here are just a bunch of professionals, smart people that rise to the challenge, people that are always willing and able to do more, sometimes with less money. Whatever, you know, we're really proud of you, of all the work you've done, and I want to especially acknowledge Wayne and Jay, because, you know, you're in the community a lot more, and believe me, that's positive, and that adds a lot of merit to your departments and to your personnel. I mean, it's just incredible how that's increased under your leaderships. I also want to acknowledge, not put your fingers in your, I also want to acknowledge that, you know, it's kind of sad because this is Steve's last time doing the budget. And, you know, and I rarely say anything positive about Steve because there's very little to say. But nevertheless, I will say one thing. Steve has learned this job from bottoms up, you know, and I've known him 38 years. So from the very bottom, you know, all the way to being city manager, he has really learned, you know, at the core and just blossomed. I'm really proud that we have a city manager, most important, that's very capable, and that really has integrity. Integrity in terms of respecting all of you, and respecting the council, and respecting the public. I mean, that's a rare commodity to have all of that. But I have seen him grow and just give us all. So, you know, so I want you to know that, you know, that from, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I think we're really going to be missing Steve quite a bit. And, you know, we regret that you're leaving, but, you know, it's like you wouldn't stay on even if I, you know, no matter what, I threatened you and did as much as I could, but in our hearts you'll be, and I think you will go down in Richfield municipal history as really being quite a champion, quite an achiever, and we're proud of you.
Edwina, I don't think I can let it go at that because there's a competition factor that weighs into your relationship with Steve. And it was amazing to watch it work after we did the groundbreaking for the Primrose, and then Maria and I convinced you and Steve to go do a little cryotherapy. And first of all, they're interesting to see in a robe with gloves on. But But more importantly, Steve got in first and refused to look to see what the temperature was. I think they cut it off at about 270 degrees below because he was spinning around and trying to get warm. And I think he came out about 4 or 5 seconds early. I'm not sure the exact time. So Edwina's first question to Brandon is, how cold did he take it and how long? She took 5 degrees more below zero and about 10 seconds more and walked out and claimed victory. It was amazing to watch. And I am curious, I know Steve said he was going to get a Groupon coupon and go back because he recognized the benefits. And Edwina, you can come with me on my card anytime.
Good.
All right?
Will
But
do.
it was fun.
Thank you. Yes.
So now I think Mike and Simon are the only two that haven't undergone cryotherapy. Not just saying.
I just want to say for the record that the mayor underestimates the value of his counsel, that on your recommendation, when I hurt my knee and you said you should go over there, I went over there that afternoon.
Great.
So,
No, that's just, okay, all right.
You're the only one?
Well, my knee, I'm doing a lot of door knocking and walking lately, so, maybe,
So you need it.
yeah, all right.